Good morning, everybody. Thanks, James, for the very kind introduction. So about 12 months ago, Kim Jarnick, another physio at MSWA, and myself decided that we would team up and look at creating a lymphedema service at MSWA because of the number of clients that we were seeing coming through with some kind of chronic swelling issue. And we wanted to learn more about it, and we wanted to be able to offer an opportunity for those clients to have their swelling looked at and treated, because chronic swelling doesn't tend to resolve on its own. It does tend to persist, and it can lead to other issues as well. So that's how this has come about. Kim and I went and did some studies, and we've become accredited lymphedema therapists. And we've got the service up and running now, and I'm just here today to talk to you a little bit about lymphedema, we'll go from there. So your learning objectives from today's presentation. So I want you to be able to develop a basic understanding of what lymphedema is, why it should be treated, and how we can treat it. So I need to talk about the bathtub analogy, okay? So this is in relation to the circulatory system. So we've got the heart, and it pumps blood out through our body, through the arterial system, and it comes back into the heart via the venous system. Now this is our bathtub here, and our bathtub represents our body's tissues. And within our body's tissues, we have our cells. And our cells are bathed in nutritious fluid, okay? And this fluid comes from our blood. Now this fluid can't hang around, it has to be cycled out, and that's where the lymphatic system comes into play. So the role of the lymphatic system is to drain the fluid out of the tissues, to filter it, to get rid of any nasties, and then to return it back into circulation. Now ideally, the amount of fluid that flows out of the blood into the tissues is equal to the amount of fluid which is drained by the lymphatic system, okay? And that maintains a happy fluid medium level in the tissues. Unfortunately, that's not always the case, and there can be an imbalance. So in this drawing, we have an imbalance caused by a faulty drain. Okay, so the drain, being the lymphatic system, is not draining the right amount of volume as what it should be. But meanwhile, the tap, the amount of fluid that's coming out of the blood, is unaffected, and that's still flowing normally, okay? So basically, the amount of fluid coming out of the tap is in excess of the amount of fluid being drained, and so the tissues fill up and they swell. And then you can have an imbalance due to a faulty tap. Okay, so the drain in this instance is working perfectly fine. It's draining as much as it can from the tissues, but the tap has got more fluid coming through it. Okay, so for whatever reason, more fluid is coming out of the blood and into the tissues than what it should be. And so you again have an excess amount of fluid coming in, and that causes the tissues to fill up and to cause tissue swelling. Okay? And then you can have the scenario where you've got an issue with both the tap and the drain. Okay, so this is a scenario that we commonly see in our clientele as a result of reduced mobility and subsequent reduced skeletal muscle contraction. So our skeletal muscle contraction is really important for return of blood through the venous system back up to our heart. And if we have reduced skeletal muscle contraction occurring, then the flow of blood back up through the venous system slows down and it starts to collect in the veins. And this causes increased pressure within the veins. And then that pressure causes fluid to be pushed out of the veins into the tissues, which equates to an increased flow. The skeletal muscle contraction is also very important for helping pump the lymphatic system. It helps to move fluid through the lymphatic system back up to the heart. So if that skeletal muscle contraction is not happening as much as it should be, then that system also slows down, creating decreased drainage. So this one's a bit of a double whammy because you've got an impairment on both sides. So after hearing that, what is lymphedema? So lymphedema is the accumulation of fluid in the tissues due to a faulty tap, a faulty drain, or both. And where does it occur? Well, it can occur in any part of the body because the imbalance can occur in any part of the body. But if we look at a leg, for example, and we do a cross-section through the leg, and we have a look at where the swelling is located, the swelling is only located in this subcutaneous space. Okay, it's not located in here. The reason being is that this area here is enclosed with what's called a myofascia. And this myofascia's job is to support the muscles and the arteries and the veins and the nerves and the bones, to support all that in place. And as a result, it's quite stiff and it doesn't really allow for much expansion. Okay? So swelling within this compartment generally doesn't happen. However, the skin is quite flexible and it can stretch. And so if one of those imbalances does occur, this subcutaneous space is where you see the swelling occur. So what does lymphedema look like? There's a bit of a spectrum. Okay? You can have presentations where you have just a little bit of puffiness in the foot and ankle. And then you can have presentations where the swelling is in the legs as well, and you've got some skin changes happening, and you've got sores occurring. Okay, and this by no means is worst case scenario. It can get a lot worse than this, but I haven't included those photos. So why should we treat lymphedema? Well, I guess what would happen if we didn't treat it? So the swelling would likely worsen over time. The swelling would likely lead to chronic low-grade inflammation. So if those cells are bathed in dirty fluid, they're not going to be very happy, and so they start to send out distress signals. And the distress signals causes inflammation, and then the inflammation causes scarring. The health of the skin would likely deteriorate. The skin would become susceptible to injury and infection, and the skin could end up with ulcers, which can take a long time to heal. So what do we want to achieve by treating lymphedema? Well, we want to optimise the health of the tissue and the skin, and we want to prevent skin infections and ulcers from occurring, and we want to optimise the healing capacities of the skin and tissue, and we want to be prophylactic about it. We want to try and treat these issues early rather than being reactive and treating them later down the track when they're much harder to treat. So basically, overall, we are wanting to achieve this by minimising and maintaining the swelling. So how do we minimise and maintain the swelling? So there's a gold standard approach called combined decongestive therapy, and it involves 4 key principles: manual lymph drainage, compression therapy, exercise, and skin care. And I'll talk about them now in a little bit more detail. So manual lymph drainage is a very specific manual therapy technique involving movement of the skin in certain directions to stimulate the underlying lymphatic system to drain fluid from the tissue in that area. It is not the same as massage. Massage is not indicated with lymphedema because when you massage, often you see the skin becoming red underneath massage, and that's because you've stimulated vasodilation, so the blood vessels expand, more blood comes into the area, and more fluid escapes into the area. So that is equivalent to turning the tap up, and we don't want to turn the tap up, we want to turn the tap down. Okay, so manual lymph drainage is a good way to be able to increase drainage of the lymph system without turning the tap up. And then we've got compression therapy. So compression therapy is about bandaging the affected limbs or wearing compression garments on the affected limbs. The principle behind that is that the external compression that's applied to the limbs opposes the force of the fluid moving out from the blood So it slows the filtration of the fluid from the blood into the tissues, so it decreases the tap. The compression also distends the lymphatic vessels, which causes them to fill, which causes contraction of the lymphatic system, like the little lymphangions along the lymph pathway. It causes them to contract, which causes increased drainage. We always prescribe exercises as well. So the exercises we prescribe are specific to lymphedema, and we will always prescribe them in line with the person's function, so they'll always be most appropriate for them. And they are designed to decrease, turn off the tap, or reduce the tap, and increase drainage. Okay. So with the exercises, we generally start proximally. So we start with breathing, and then we start with trunk exercises. We want to clear any congestion further up before working lower down. It's kind of like traffic. You know, if there's a jam up here, those cars can't come up unless these ones are cleared first. So we always start with clearing proximally and then clearing distally. So these exercises will always start proximally, they'll work distally, and then you'll come back up again. Okay, and then you can go back and you can do that a few times. Skincare is really important as well. We want to make sure that our clients have healthy skin because skin in distress causes inflammation, which causes swelling. Okay, so if we've got healthy skin, you're going to reduce the tap. So what does our service involve? So the first thing we'll do is we'll come out, we'll do a lymphedema assessment. We'll look at your specific problems and sort of the behaviour of the swelling that you have. And then we'll develop a lymphedema management plan, and it might involve bandaging, it might involve compression garments, it might involve exercises, it might involve manual lymph drainage, and it will always involve a lot of education. And if all goes well, we do 6 monthly follow-ups or as required, and we'll always provide ongoing support. So if you want to access the service, it's best to email us at lymph@mswa.org.au, or you can speak to your client liaison coordinator. The therapists currently involved in providing the service are myself and Kim Jarnik. We are based out of MSWA Wilson, but we're happy to travel to whichever centre is closest to you, or we're happy to do a home visit. And at the moment we are doing six monthly visitations to the southwest region, but we're happy to increase that if the demand is there. And I'd like to acknowledge Dr. Jan Douglas and Kobe Blanchfield, who were our teachers from the Dr. Vodder School International, and they were great in providing us with the skills that we needed to be able to become accredited and to be able to provide this service to you. And they still provide us with ongoing support. And also James Beckett and the MSWA management team, because without them, you know, this venture of ours wouldn't have been possible. Anyone got any questions? Yes.
How long was your training? How long did you go for?
So the training was in different parts. The first part was an online course. Because they run it internationally, they make you do like an online component, and then they come to your city and they do a practical component. So ours was a 2-week full-time practical component where we learn all this sort of stuff, and then after that we can register. Yeah, but you have to have like a qualification beforehand. Yeah, no one can just walk in and do it. Yeah.
If people who aren't MS sufferers, can they facilitate your services?
If they are connected with MSWA, yes. So they don't have to have MS, but they have to be connected with us in order to see us. Yes.
Do you see a lot of lymphedema in people with MS? Do you think it contributes to lymphedema?
MS contributes to lymphedema? Yes. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, because I guess people who are sitting down for long periods in their chairs, it reduces their breathing. They're not breathing like normal when we stand up. And breathing is really important because it has a suction in it. So when your rib cage expands, it helps to suck the venous return back to the heart, and it helps to suck the lymphatic return back to the heart. So as soon as you sit down for a long period and your breathing slows down and the volumes get smaller, you know, it's causing that stasis, and then you're susceptible to developing, you know, fluid retention. And then same thing, if you're not walking properly, so even if you're walking with your feet out and you're kind of just pivoting from one leg to another, you're not getting the muscle pump in the legs. And so people who do walk with that external rotation are more susceptible to developing swelling because they're not using their skeletal muscle pump in the most optimal way.